Yes, thank you, Thomas. My name is Elbak and work for IDC Nordic. And I'll start by taking a step back and talk about this digital transformation that everybody talks about, a little bit about what we see that is and where we see the market being, how mature the companies are in actually transforming, and then move on to some of the platform that is necessary, that all of your solutions are part of building that platform. So, of course, there's a lot of talk about digital transformation, and sometimes it's actually too much when you read the different newspapers and stuff like that. You can't open a business paper or an IT paper without digital transformation being mentioned. But we have seen a lot of examples, of course, with industries being transformed. These are the usual ones with Uber and Netflix and Spotify, but we see a lot of other industries that are, if not fully transformed, they are definitely in the process of transforming right now. So it's definitely real, the transformation that we talk about, and also it's necessary, because when these industries change, companies need to change how they address the markets. We've seen several examples, again, the traditional ones with Kodak, Blockbuster, Borders, and in case you don't know, it's an old Danish electronics retail store that went bankrupt earlier this year. So regardless actually of which industry you're in, at one point you are being digitalized, being disrupted, as everyone says, and we see a lot of things happening. So it is necessary to really take this transformation very seriously. And also it is, according to our surveys, 89% of CEOs, so not CIOs, but the business managers across Europe, they claim that digital transformation is on their agenda. Again, that might be because they read so much about it and hear people like me and my colleagues saying that it's necessary, so they feel compelled to answer that. But we really see that it is a business priority in a lot of companies and through all industries actually. And when we talk about digital transformation, we talk about 4 pillars that really enables this. We talk about cloud, big data or analytics, social media, and mobile as being the overall drivers for digital transformation, of building the platform that enables the digital transformation. We also talk about what we call innovation accelerators, which are the next level of technologies, the new technologies, the really interesting ones right now, where we talk about robotics, cognitive systems, Internet of Things, and the like. That really is the next level of technology areas that we're going to see really disrupt the markets. Of course, with the usual, with self-driving cars, for instance, and also a lot of other manufacturing can be completely disrupted. So a lot of new things happening, and the reason we see this happening right now is because these 4 pillars that I talked about really are very mature now. They've been really embraced by companies. 80%, and I say that they use public cloud. The real number might be a bit higher, because companies still tend to use some cloud services that they forget about. We see, 80% of companies that acknowledge that this growth in data, the new data sources that we see, the explosion of the digital universe, as we call it, that will have an impact on their business. We see 60% use social for business collaboration, and if we add to that how many that use it for recruiting, for marketing, we'll have an even higher number. And we also see 85% of companies and organizations, they allow at least some of their employees access to email on mobile phones or a mobile platform, and 40% they use more advanced collaborative offerings than that. So these kind of are in place, really making sure that it is possible to transform the business. So if we look at what really drives this, we see that the first one is customer experience, really making sure that the new front door towards the customers, that leverages all of these technologies, that improves, that the companies remain relevant and become even more relevant to the customers. Then we say it's about process optimization, improving productivity and reducing cost, which are all internally focused areas. So really about optimizing the existing business. And finally, we also see just less than half of the respondents saying that they also develop new digital products or services, either to complement their existing services or really transforming their existing services by these digital products. And I should just mention that I don't have a source on these, but these are from a Nordic survey that we did earlier this year of about 400, I think, respondents across all industries and company sizes. And IDC has made this model about how ready companies are to transform, how long they have come. I will not bore you with the details of the model, but basically we're just seeing that most companies are what we call here either upper, we call them digital players or digital, what is it we call it? Just a second. Explorers, sorry about that. And that really means that companies have really understood that they need to do something about this. They understand that they need to transform, they need to leverage these different technologies and change the business. But really, they only use it as have pilot projects. They may have some initiatives scattered around the organizations, but they aren't really fully integrated into the strategy. And they haven't really changed the business models, which are the transformers and the disruptors. So it's still very much about optimizing the business, making the customer experience, as I already said, better, being more relevant, but really changing the business models completely. We haven't seen many companies really doing that yet. But of course, that is something we're going to see over the coming few years. Also, we talk about what the impact actually is from an IT point of view. It changes the market. We call the second platform of IT. So that's the old world of servers and PCs. That's a market which is declining, whereas the third platform, which is the cloud, the mobile devices, mobile data, and stuff like that, really make sure that the overall ICT market will experience some growth. But the strongest growth really is in what we call the innovation accelerators and services and products related to that. We also see that it really changes the competitive view of the market, and this kind of event is, I guess, really shows that as well. Not too many years ago, I don't think we would have seen a lot of open source people in the same room with Microsoft, but we really see that a lot of this is changing. So we see, for instance, Google being a competitor to Spotify, and still Spotify rely on Google platform, and to some extent Amazon, and the same. Netflix and Amazon Prime are competitors, but still Netflix relies on Amazon. And finally, we have Rackspace and Microsoft. Rackspace being a competitor in many ways in the cloud area, but at the same time, they use their competencies to help their customers implement, for instance, Azure solutions. And also, we see that companies change and that is both about involving the line of business, they become more and more involved in not just the acquisitions or the purchasing of IT, but really about defining the IT strategy. We see that in a lot of companies. We see a lot of companies reorganizing, 45% saying that they have changed the organizational structure of their IT department within the last 2 years. That is very much about putting IT consultants, as they call it, into the business organization, or business consultants into the IT organization to really align IT and business in a more appropriate way. 43%, and I think that number is a bit too high, claim that they have a innovation unit or innovation department that really only has to focus on innovating the company and disrupting the company from within. And we also see a lot of companies plan on or have already hired a chief digital officer, so a person which is responsible for the digital strategy. And it's fun to see actually that about half of those, they actually have it from they believe it should be someone in the IT department, and the other half think that it should be someone outside of the IT department. So, and finally, we see a lot of companies still, they do not have a fixed process for how to go about these digital transformation projects. So it is very much starting from scratch all the time, no fixed projects in place. We also see some barriers. That is to some extent technology-driven. So the technology may not be ready by itself, or there might not be partners available that can bring it to the market and bring it to the customers. And also it is the customers or the users themselves, really about not having the skills to use the new technologies, or having too much legacy IT, or not being imaginative enough, not thinking enough out of the box about what can they actually do. We also have something about the market. So of course a company should be careful about transforming its business models if the market and the customers are not ready. So that is of course an inhibitor. Rules and regulations, again, very much talked about when we talk about the autonomous cars, who should be responsible for what. The skills of the employees in the organization and the processes, they most certainly should be changed, or not the people shouldn't necessarily be changed, but at least they should be educated, and you may need to hire new skill sets. So the organization might not be ready. And finally, we have the personal. A lot of people are still a bit hesitant towards embracing new technology. And also we see that they take pride, or take ownership of either their products or the processes that they feel that they own in the company. So really about why should they do this? Why should people change? So if you want to succeed in this digital transformation, you really need to educate the users, really need to make sure that you communicate why and what the purpose is about doing this, and what is in it for the individuals. Just grab cover. Right, so that helped. Overall, there are at least 3 things that you need to pay attention to when in this digital transformation. One of them is about the infrastructure, it's about the data and the information, and it's about the people and the processes. And when we talk about infrastructure, it really is about balancing the cost, even making sure that you modernize the infrastructure, that it is possible to manage and govern it, and also that it is flexible and agile. So that really is about very much about leveraging cloud. And we see that all in all, 85% of the Nordic companies, they use cloud in some form or another, and most use public, so the majority use public cloud services, but still only almost 2/3 use private cloud as well. Most common is the software as a service, but also we see a lot of growth within especially infrastructure as a service. So and if you can see in these numbers, we really see that companies, they do not just use a public cloud for anything. They really have this hybrid setup or a mixed setup, not necessarily a hybrid setup, but really a mixed bag of how they source these different services across different cloud-based platforms. But if you look at the lower part of this slide over here, we also see that very few actually have a common setup, a common cloud platform, or common SLAs, or a single provisioning platforms. And also you see over here, we see quite few companies really have a cloud-first strategy. We see almost 1/3 or a little more than 1/3 of companies, they actually do not have a set strategy. So even though the majority of companies, they use cloud, they have embraced it partly due to some consumerization or shadow IT in the different lines of businesses, but also just because it's easy, especially maybe in development and so on. So it's really been embraced without really having taken a strategic decision about cloud. So second one about the information and data, we of course see what we call the digital universe, that expands. We see over the next 5 years it will be tenfold as large as today. We see 90% of all the data is unstructured, so it's very difficult to really deal with, and it is assessed that about 1/4 of the content is valuable. I think sometimes when you look at the content online, I think it's more than 75%, which is not valuable. But nonetheless, a large section of it is valuable, and a very small subset of that is actually tagged and analyzed. So there's a large amount of content that has a potential to be valuable, but which no one can really extract that value from. And we also see that IoT, of course, being one of the contributors to this growth as well. We see more and more devices, and by 2020 we'll have 4 times as many, 3.5 to 4 times as many non-IT devices connected to the internet than we will have PCs and smartphones and the like. And also we'll see that will grow tremendously, the data from these devices. And we have 80% of the Nordic companies, they actually say that they understand that this change, this growth in data, this change in data sources, that will have an impact on their business. The way that most companies actually approach this is saying, well, we need to upgrade our infrastructure, we have more data, so we need more powerful servers, we need more storage capacity. That is the typical approach to this. We see only about of the companies, they say, well, we actually implement some analytics tools, we change our information processes to really not just cope with the growth in data, but really to drive the value out of it and be able to leverage that. So again, really relatively, I would say, immature market with a lot of potential in driving additional value from this, and about presenting new tools and so forth in that market. About processes and people, we see today that what companies call critical software deployments, we see 1/3 of those deployments are actually late compared to the original plan, and 10% on top of that is completely cancelled. We see that code change, typically a quarter of the companies, they spent at least 3 weeks implementing that. And what else do we have here? We have the fact that most projects are, or 1/3 of them, are still not integrated in the overall strategy, and we see that the number of monthly deployment will just decrease. So that means it becomes, with all of these challenges with deployments, with development, really means that companies need to do something differently. Some of the things to do is really about embracing these DevOps or other forms of agile development processes. And we do see that there are quite a lot of companies, about 55%, saying that they have some sort of agile or DevOps implemented already, and most of them have done it quite recently. And we see, again, a lot of interest in it. And what really the way they want to measure this is not so much in cost of projects, but really about how fast can they bring new services to the market. Becoming more productive, becoming more this. So really we see this shift from just looking at cost of deploying something to really see how fast can we actually deploy new solutions, how fast can we do these change requests and so on. So the time to market is really the key to this. So these 3 things that I mentioned. Building the right infrastructure really is about leveraging cloud, typically hybrid cloud, so not just public or private, but really kind of a mixed bag of all of it. It is about leveraging big data solutions and not just to cope with it, but really driving the value, understanding the customers better, and really change your business models or the way you go to market, understand customers better, and really get a competitive advantage in terms of by leveraging this data. And it's about being more efficient, changing the development processes, for instance, with DevOps to really become more innovative and be more agile. And a lot of clicks here. You can barely see this, I think, but these are a lot of different open source solutions here, and we asked about how relevant they are for this deployment. And we really see this, that well, basically we just see that open source solutions are really important, considered very important by the customers when they need to do a cloud deployment. A lot of them look to open source solutions of various here. And I say the one being very important actually means that they have either spent money on it already or have made a commitment or a plan to invest, so that they have actually committed to it. It's not just that they find it generally being important. Regarding the data, we really see that again, open source being very relevant. We see about a third, depending on area here, say that they prefer an open source solution for that. So again, huge opportunity to build open source solutions within big data. And finally, we see about DevOps. We see that again, almost 50%. Well, not again, but we see that almost 50% they want to rely on open source when they implement DevOps tools and DevOps processes. So open source is extremely relevant, extremely important when we look at building this platform for which enables the digital transformation. So thank you for that. If you have any questions, I'm sure that Thomas will
Thank you, Anders.
answer that.